Hi, folks. It's me, Shanila. Welcome to a Flow Breathwork Facilitator Training Student Spotlight. We're talking with Hillarie today, who is a current student inside of our Flow Breathwork Facilitator Training Program. And a lot of the work that she does around earth education, nature education, and creating liberation through mindfulness and breathwork. So we're going to learn a little bit about her journey through becoming a breathwork facilitator, and also what type of liberation work and what liberation work is in terms of country living, specifically for Black women, and also liberation work as it relates to mindfulness.
Hello.
Hey, welcome, Hillary. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
I was just telling the folks a little bit of a background about some of the work that you do in terms of liberation work and how it's connected to mindfulness, country living, and kind of the slow life era. So I
Yes,
would love to invite you to introduce yourself as the educator that you are, and then we'll take it from there.
sure. Yeah, thank you. So my name is Hillarie Maddox. I am the founder of Black Girl Country Living and creator of Rewilding experiences. And um, for me, rewilding in this experience through breathwork has really just been a continuation of this journey of coming back to myself and remembering my connection to the land, remembering my connection to my ancestors, and in doing that, really wanting to bring other people along with me for this experience and wanting to help other people remind themselves of our personal power and our personal ability to tell ourselves a different story about what's possible, and create in a collective and in a community the things that we want to see in this world. And I think a powerful way that I've accessed that for myself, and the reason why I'm in breathwork, is because I believe that slowing down, coming back to ourselves, and being with our breath is one of the most powerful and effective ways to do that.
Awesome. And when you say rewilding, there's different definitions and variations of that word come to mind. So is that how you define that as a connecting back to your roots?
Yeah. So for me, I lived in the city. I had a very sort of traditional life. I worked in the tech industry. And when I left the city with my family during the pandemic, it was this really big shift for me in terms of like the pace of my life. And it really kind of put a spotlight on a lot of um, the ways in which I'd been moving through life, which were out of alignment with my values. And so I was trying to find a word to sort of represent what it meant to start like shedding and releasing a lot of these things that I'd later discover like they're just not me. There are a lot of the stories that had been put on me or things that I felt like I had to do in order to be in this world. And that shedding, the word that I found that most resonated was rewilding. And oftentimes it's used in like an ecological context where people talk about um, taking a space and letting it go back to like its natural habitat, or allowing sort of nature to find a new equilibrium, a new balance. And I think that that's true for ourselves too. Like when we are told stories about what we have to be, how we have to show up all of the time, there's a process of returning, of shedding, and of realizing like there's a natural balance that takes place, and it's challenging, it's tough, and it's just like any other part of nature. We're just coming back to our own sense of who we are.
I love that. And so, part of what I know about your work, based on, the things that we've gotten to talk about inside of our containers, and also some of the initiatives that you have launched in your neighborhood and in your community, you speak so much about liberation through country living. And there's, pictures of you with your vegetables and in the farm and getting your hands dirty and getting your feet onto the earth. So when you're talking about coming back to your roots, what elements of liberation is in that country living for you?
Mm. I think for me, a lot of it is like the slowness and the stillness, and the remembering that like this is like the simple things in life, the essence of life are the things that like they can't be purchased in a store, they can't be bought, or there's no guru out there that's going to tell you how to, you know, that I have the thing that's going to fix your life. I think country living sort of represents like coming back to what is essential and what is necessary, and reflective of like the um I guess I grew up in a really rural place, and so it's kind of returning me back to like this is the things that I grew up knowing were true about how we live. And I think I lost that sense of what I needed, living in a city, pursuing my career. And so liberation for me has been like letting go of all of those things and realizing like I have those things within me. I have the power to decide, you know, what makes me happy, to decide what success looks like, to decide that I don't need to be reliant on systems in order to feed my family. I think there's so much liberation, and even to retell the story about what it means to be connected to the land as a descendant of enslaved people. It's not just something that we left and now we're better for it. We can come back, and I think that there's a deep healing that happens, and that has happened for me personally, when I've connected to the land and realizing that there's something so sacred about the wisdom you learn from having your hands in the soil, just like my ancestors did.
This word that's coming up to me, and thank you for sharing all of that, because I think it's important that that piece that you said around, you know, part of your screen name here, it says Black girl country living, right? And I think sometimes we forget the history of the separation that we've had from our lineages, and whoever's lineages, right? Lineages, ancestral information, and also knowledge and wisdom that are passed down by elders and
Yeah.
wisdom keepers. And so part of the word that comes up for me when I'm listening to you talk is reclamation, right? This like reclaiming of your own sovereignty and your own ability to tap back into the wisdom of what already is here,
Yeah.
and unsubscribing from, like you mentioned, the systems and the ways of thinking and being that aren't necessarily conducive to how people, blank people, just people in general, are meant to exist in synergistic ways with nature. And
Yeah.
so I'd love to hear your perspective around, you know, part of what you mentioned around how and why you came to study breathwork and mindfulness, and how that took you from your city life, you know, city gal to the country gal, right? So like how did that transition happen for you? What are some of the examples?
Yeah. Um, so I would say that my mindfulness practice started in my garden. It started by, and it wasn't like intentional. It was just like I had no idea. I'd never had a garden before. I'd watched people around me garden and have gardens, and it was like magic to me. I had no idea how they were doing it, and so I didn't think I could grow anything. And so the first year I had a garden and I saw things start to grow, and I was like, this truly is like magical. It's so transformational. And I think the skill that I developed was the ability to like witness my plants go from being this tiny sprout to like having a little bud to having a piece of fruit on them. And um, it it kind of creates this mirror. So I was always like reflecting back about to myself, like what is this telling me about myself? And I'm really big into journaling and just doing like nightly reflections. So I think a lot of that stuff started to come up in my journaling. And I didn't think about it as mindfulness or meditation at the time. But over time, I was starting to realize like it was grounding me, it was like slowing me down, it was helping me to become aware of my thoughts, of really conscious of decisions I was making. It helped me to become conscientious of the fact that I was making a lot of decisions in my life that were completely removed from what I actually valued. And I think one of the things that I always come back to is community. And I always have valued community. I've always said that that's important to me. But when I actually sat down and looked at how I was spending my time, where I was putting my energy, none of it reflected community. And so that for me was like sort of a wake up call about like, why do I say that this is important to me and yet I can't see in my life that it is actually something I value. And so from there, it really started to evolve. My husband has always had a solid meditation practice. And so I was like, maybe there's something to this. And and so I started meditating. I was using the Open app, and on the Open app, they have both meditation and breath work. And I started to like step into the world of breath work, and I was like, this is interesting. Like, I've never thought too deeply about using my breath in an intentional way beyond, maybe being at a yoga class and people asking like to take a deep breath, to flow with your breath. Um, I never had thought about that being sort of like the singular focus of a meditation. And I was at this point where in my meditation practice, I was becoming much more aware of sort of all of the thoughts that I was having throughout the day, all of the ways in which like I was telling myself really maybe like mean things or unhelpful things, but I didn't know beyond observing those things, like how to move those things through me or out of me. And breath work sort of emerged at that time, and I was just like, this is like an active meditation almost, where I was able to, instead of just having to sit in whatever feelings came up in meditation, I was then able to like actually move through them and find some kind of comfort um, in being able to sit with them long enough to release them and not feel like I have to hold this down and protect myself from whatever I was experiencing. Um, so breathwork just became like this an additional tool of liberation. And at the same time, I was getting really into astrology and learned that I was Cancer moon, Cancer rising, and it kind of gave me an explanation for like how emotional I've always been in my life. And it helped me to appreciate that side of me instead of feeling like that was something I had to be ashamed of. And so breath work also became this outlet for me to like help me explore that side of myself and not feel like there was something wrong with me for having really deep emotions and deep feelings.
I love that, and everything that you're saying, I think many people in the chat are resonating with, and they're saying like, yes, I totally relate. And part of what I wanted to go deeper on with you, Hillary, is when you're saying this mindfulness, like we're sometimes on this like automated process, right? We're just going through day to day, and we think we're self-aware, we're conscientious, but then there's like a next layer that opens up. And with that next layer, when you said, yes, I don't have to protect myself, that word you said, my protection, I felt like I realized what I was doing in order to protect
Mm-hmm.
myself. So how does this show up in your present work? Because a lot of the things that me and you have talked about inside of our container is this still idea of protection, right? Initiating the things that you do in your community, the collaborations that you're having with, with folks in the work that you're doing, and also our favorite word that shows up, right? Perfectionism, which is a form of
Yeah.
protection. So how has your relationship with protection shifted, and what does that kind of look like in the present moment?
Mm, I love that question. I think there were a lot of things that I used for protection in the past. I think about things like I used to have really big issues with like shopping, and that being my outlet for sort of disassociating and removing myself from issues I was having. I had issues with smoking a lot, drinking. I and just like in relationships, really sort of disengaging whenever there was a point of tension. And um, I think my relationship has shifted through this work in that I don't view those things like the things that I was running from. It could have been a lot of anxiety. It could have been depression. It could have been just like a challenging conversation that I just was scared to have and felt like having or engaging in a difficult conversation in my body, it felt like it was going to be the end of the world. But I think because I've continued to do this practice of like sit with my emotions, release my emotions, see what thoughts trigger my emotions, it feels like I feel this different sense, this different kind of relationship, I guess, with my emotions. Like they are there to help serve me, they are there to help me move through something. And I have, um, I don't feel the need so much to have that extra layer of protection, um, of sort of disassociating, of removing myself, because I recognize that I'm safe when I'm experiencing an emotion. I don't, even though it's not always like socially acceptable to have a breakdown and cry. I also recognize that like that is what I need to do to process a lot of times, is just to have like some kind of emotional release. And so I don't feel like I have to run from that any longer. And that I always have a safe place to come back to, which is my meditation, my breathwork practice, and that has really served me in so many ways.
Beautiful. Well, Hillary, I want to ask you, there's a difference between receiving something and appreciating it for yourself, and then there's a next layer, another level of wanting to facilitate breath work,
Yeah.
right? And to step into your facilitator's hat. So can you walk me through the process of what makes you want to go to that section of the work instead of just saying like this is working for me and I'm going to keep this for me because this is supporting what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Um, well, I think so. After I had practiced for a while last year, I started working with a breathwork coach, who I'm still working with, and who has just like helped me really understand the practice and help me understand what the practice is doing for me. And wellness and accessibility to wellness tools and practices has always been something that I've cared deeply about. I started my career as a social worker and as a therapist. And one of the reasons why I left the field is because it felt like it was so inaccessible to a lot of people. And it felt like it was so clinical in a sense that like we were, there were these things that were happening behind closed doors. There wasn't sort of a holistic approach to bringing the family and bringing the community in. Like, how are we actually addressing these issues? And with breath work, I just see, I think because it has such deep lineage, and it has such a deep historical roots as like a collective practice. I see just such I see it as a powerful tool for accessibility, to remind people that we all have our breath, and we all have the capacity to use our breath to help us to regulate ourselves, to help us to find the things that we oftentimes go outside of us to look for. And so, especially with the community that I'm serving, I really wanted to give them something that they never have to like come back to me for. Remind them that they have this tool, this practice, that can get them through the moments, just like it served me.
Beautiful. And this piece that you're saying, this community angle, and I totally get, because part of what we do inside Flow Breathwork Facilitator training is support so many folks who have very similar backgrounds in social work, and they're therapists and they're nurses, they're doulas, they're folks who are in the helping profession, in the healing arts, and they resonate the same sentiment that yes, there's nothing bad about these practices, but a lot of the modern traditional practices really skip the element of community. And
Hmm.
community is kind of this vague idea in some communities, like in some domains of life. Community is kind of just this buzzword and this keyword that we're like community, community, but what does that actually mean? So I'd like
Yeah.
to ask you, like, what is community? Like, what is the sensation of community that is supporting this holistic type of work in the way that you see it?
Yeah. Um, so for me, I think about like sort of those, it's like a set of circles of people who I've gathered with. I think I have a really beautiful online community who I've gotten to know over these last several years. And then I have an in-person community that's local and regional. And they're the people who I think that I feel most resonant with, who I share sort of ideas about the future with, what's possible with. And they are people who are doing a lot of earth tending work, who I think see that there's tremendous possibility in us relearning what it means to have a relationship to the land, relationship to ourselves, and relationship to each other. And so I found those people in many different places. And I think the challenge for me has been, how do I serve those people? And with the skill set that I have, and community for me is being able to show up with whatever skills and tools that we have, and being able to share those with people who we care about, and being able to have open and honest conversations, be able to show vulnerability, and even though we might not see eye to eye, even though we might not have, the same sort of preferences in life, like there's a shared understanding that we're here to help each other and we need each other. And for me, it just, the more that I lean into community and show up for community and they show up for me, the more I realize like this is essential and this is necessary and we need to support each other in whatever ways we can.
I love that description and that definition because, part of, at least in my perspective, like reclamation work and liberation work really cannot be from an individual perspective. It can't just
Yeah,
be you doing all the work and then feeling like the world is so heavy because you have to be the only educator or the only person, and there's this like self-proclaimed burden that we start to feel in our body where it's like it's so
yeah,
big, how do I do everything, when it's really, for at least in my perspective of community, and at least the way that the healing arts resonates with me, is that all of us is holding a piece of the puzzle. We're all supporting, holding different parts of the wisdom and parts of the information, parts of the labor and parts of the rest. And it's like this synergistic thing where like if you're resting, then maybe I'm working. And if I'm working, then maybe you're resting. And then maybe both of us go to work and then maybe both of us are resting. There's this kind of like understanding that not one person is the sole responsible proprietor of like global change and world change. And I think that's the thing that a lot of healers, healing arts practitioners, and whatever sexy title people have nowadays, there's this fear on taking on that responsibility. So is there something that you can share with us that helps you kind of think about what your responsibility is versus what it is that you're kind of leaving room to
ooh,
explore?
I love this question so much, because it's something that I've thought a lot about over the last year, really. I'm part of a collective of women who, we're a farm collective. There's a few women who are full-time farmers, and then there's several of us who are just kind of like, we show up to work on projects at the farm, we show up to support them, we show up in community. And I think one of the realizations that I've had is that I have two young kids. I have dreams of having a farm, but like being a full-time farmer and like doing it all, it was never meant to be done alone. And so I think finding peace with that, especially in a world that's like, yeah, go do it all. Like you can own it all, you can be it all, like you don't need anybody. um, that's kind of a fantasy. And I think continuing to like come back down to earth in terms of like, we need each other. We need to be able to support each other. And while I might not be able to go to farm school or be able to apprentice full time to really understand, how to run a farm, what I can do is support those people through wellness activities, through reminding them that they have their breath, or creating spaces of rest for them. And in turn, they support me by giving me vegetables, by teaching me about what it means to put my hands in the dirt, about not being scared to try something new. So I think we have to let go of the burden of like, I am the savior, I'm going to save everything. And I think it is especially hard in this healing space, but also in this farming, like earth tending space, where we're very attuned to what is happening on this planet right now. Um, and it feels like, oh my God, I have to do something, like I have to save this. But I think that is like our rugged individuality telling us, like, it is your job alone to figure this out, to solve all the problems, but we can't solve this kind of problem and that same level of consciousness. And the thing that we have been lacking for so long is true community and a true awareness of like, what are the gifts that each of us show up to share? And instead of trying to be like, I am the savior that's going to come in and write in and save the day, what is the piece that you bring to this puzzle, and how do we put this puzzle together so that we can have collective impact?
Big snaps and like preach, Hillary, let's go. Let's go. Yeah, so I would love to kind of ask you about, your experience inside Flow Breathwork Facilitator training, because you're still still going through the program, you're still in the process of training, and there is so many different things that happen along the way. Like there's informational, there's the practice, there's also the application of it,
Mhm.
how it applies into your real life. So what has your experience been so far?
What has my experience been? Well, first of all, I started this off being like, let me go ahead and get my breathwork facilitator. Let me get this done. I think when I first started, you were like, some people finish in 3 months. I was like, great, I'm going to wrap this up in 3 months. I'm going to be off doing my thing. And the more that I've gotten into the material and the more that I've gotten to know the people in the program, the more that I'm like, this isn't just like a show up and check the box sort of experience. It really is about like, how am I integrating all of these ideas, and how am I showing up in this community to support other people and allowing them to support me? And it's been beautiful. Like it's been more than I imagined. I'm very particular about my teachers. I'm very particular about like wanting to have community in learning spaces. Again, like it's necessary. I think we need people to reflect back to us the things that we're learning. And so I think having the community space to share these ideas, um, to help us to grow in ways that I wouldn't otherwise, has been amazing. The BIPOC lens that you bring to this, and you're always reminding us that this is like an ancestral practice. This isn't just some new age, like, somebody made this up and now we're going to go teach you, we have our, specific way that we breathe. Like these things are things that our ancestors have done for lifetimes, and always bringing it back to like all of these different lenses through which societies and cultures have understood our breath to work and how it moves energy through our body, how we connect to our emotions, connect to the earth. There's just so many lenses and so many perspectives that you bring to this, that have helped me to really blossom, and have helped me to remind me that this is not just about like learning and walking away. This is also about my own personal transformation and taking that very seriously. And yeah, it's been so great. Like there's no part of this has been easy. I think this has just been another reminder that we get what we put into this. We have to continue to show up and see the work done in ourselves in order to be able to provide that for other people.
Mm. I love this piece that you mentioned in that end where you said it hasn't been easy, and it's also the work that you're putting in for yourself. And I would love to, before we wrap up, just hear your perspective of what it is that you learned about yourself so far.
Oh, Shanila, um, where, where, where do I begin? I think the biggest thing, so my healing journey began several years ago, but I think I had been doing a lot of that in isolation, or I was doing it with a therapist, or just kind of, sharing piecemeal, like with my husband, but like unpacking things, but keeping it in silent. And in this space, it was like being able to unpack things in front of people and not have the shame of like, this is the person, people who I come from, or this is the lineage that I have. And I think the most powerful thing has been sharing like my lineage, my family history, the trauma that has been passed down through generations and has landed on my lap, and to be able to like unpack that in front of people and not be like, and this is why I'm so fucked up, or but to be like, this is what makes me me, and this is the baggage that I have to carry, or I can decide that I want to do things differently. And to be able to declare that in front of other people and have other people be like, yes, like, let's do this for our children, let's do this for our communities, I think has been like the most transformational piece of all of this.
Amazing. Well, Hillarie, I have one last question for you.
Sure.
How do you love to play?
Well, this year, my one of my daily practices is dance, and it is in large part because of your program, because of flow breath work, reminding me that, like, body movement, engaging with our bodies in ways that we normally don't get to, and reminding ourselves that, like, this is our one life here. Like, we may as well enjoy it. We may as well move and play and engage with different experiences in ways that we're often told, like, that's not professional, you're grown up, like, you don't get to do that anymore. And so dance is how I've been engaging with play, and it's been so fun.
I mean, there's no better way to go back to that inner child than playing in the dirt and dancing around.
Yep,
I think we're on the right track.
absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Hillarie, how can people find you and work with you?
So I'm on Instagram, Black Girl Country Living, and I also have a Substack, Black Girl Country Living, there as well. You can check that out. And if you subscribe there, you'll also get my podcast, but my podcast is on all platforms as well.
Amazing. And what's your podcast
Uh,
called?
Black, Black Girl Country Living as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave the links for all of that so people can connect with you. And thank you so much for joining me, Hillarie. I
Thank
will see you in
you.
class.
All right. Bye. Thank you.